All right, the wacky world of technical difficulties. So our topic now is operations management. If you're in the book, you'll see something called product management. It's in chapter 22. So we haven't really spent much time on the actual production processes, just the management really, as far as that goes. This stuff is, it contains product development, different kinds of production systems, quality control, which follows from that, and finally a little bit about inventory control. So those are all the elements that we're going to focus on here. So let me put them up on from the syllabus. If it's readable. So what does it say? Purpose of production management systems. It's efficiency, right? We're not selling anything. There's no marketing involved. It's all about efficiency, efficient use of resources and less waste. Features of product development goes from innovation, right? We talked about Kaizen a little bit before. Then there's quality control and inventory control. So there's really four main topics in this section. So if we start with the most basic elements of our book, we have production refers to the methods of processes involved in building a product. The production concept states, production concept. If we can build products at affordable prices that people will buy, minimize costs, and maintain high quality, the products will sell themselves, which is what that quotation is getting at the top of the page. It's implying that we only need advertising because our products aren't very good. Advertisers would argue that you need to have information about why your products are so good. But essentially, that's the purpose, right? That's the purpose is to be able to produce quality and at a good price. Now, the next part is very basic, but it's going to come back to us when we do different quality control analysis. So we'll talk about these three different parts of or stages of the production process. The process of production, I'm on page 147. The process of production is also known as the transformational process. It can also be the process of adding value to resources. It takes raw materials, skills, people, knowledge, generally IP or other institutional knowledge, and technology and money, and transforms them into a finished product. So you have all these different levels of what they're called inputs. If the selling price for the finished product is greater than the total cost of production, which comes down to consumer value, or how much value they put into that product, then they'll add value. The added value comes in from the consumer side, and that has to be convinced through advertising, at least it seems that way, and that will lead to a profit. Added value is what we're doing here. So we buy the coffee, we brew it, we sell it on the street. It cost us $3,000 to make it. We sell it for $5,000, so we added $2,000 of value to that good. That's a financial term, but this is the production So besides that paragraph, there's labor, there's all the standard inputs. We have capital, money, labor, raw materials, and intellectual property or know-how, intelligence, that entrepreneurial element. So it's really kind of this four usually. Labor, capital, raw materials, technology, intellectual property, and research. Those last three are kind of together. So that's all the inputs that you're going to get. Of course, the output is the finished product or service. And the output is going to have certain kinds of elements, dimensions, packaging, sizes, distribute, where it's sold, how it's distributed. So that's the distribution chain. So this is the supply chain into production, and that's the outputs go down the distribution chain. In the middle of this is where we have our issues of quality and inventory. So we have methods that we produce, which we'll talk about next. The skills necessary for the staff in order for them to be able to perform those tasks and methods. We also have the inventory quality control, and that's basically what we're looking at inside processes. Now, we looked at the production manager last semester. There was a whole thing on, I think we watched a video about the production manager and all the different elements that he does. I think we did. It was a pretty good video. Oh no, it's coming up here. So we have it coming up now. Yes, it's quite a good video. I might end up showing it today or next class. Or I'll sign it for homework. But it just shows how many things are involved. When you're the manager of production, there's a lot of things that you have to do. So let's look at least at the three different methods of production first.
Can begin. And of course some examples down there of capital intensive processes. Hi there.
This is really short.
Let's take a quick look at a concept called the resource mix when it comes to operations. What we're looking at here is the distinction between labour intensive processes and capital intensive processes. And businesses really have to make a decision as to what's the right mix of labour and capital, people and machinery in their operations. Labour-intensive processes, so put some examples down there on the screen, hotels and restaurants, and generally the service sector is pretty labour-intensive, examples of labour-intensive operations, fruit farming, fruit picking. The key features of labour-intensive processes are that the costs of production tend to be mainly the hiring, the rewarding of labour, wages, salaries, potentially for things like fruit farming, picking, piece rate payments depending on how much has been achieved. So costs in labour intensive processes tend to be more variable in nature than capital intensive processes. But the big issue for a labour intensive business or industry is firstly getting the right quality and supply of labour. Are there enough people to do the job? Can they do the job to the right quality? And also cost. Can you hire people at a cost which means your process is profitable? Compare and contrast therefore that with capital intensive processes. Now here, capital costs, costs of hiring, investing, depreciating machinery, implementing systems as part of production, the capital costs tend to be higher than the labour costs. And another feature of capital intensive processes is that there's often a significant investment required before you get the benefits of being capital intensive. For example, the investment here, as the picture suggests, in a highly automated production line. The first cars might roll off the line, but it might take a while before you've got the systems and the capital and the machinery in place before the production can begin. And I've put some examples down there of capital-intensive processes. Car manufacturing is a great example. Any industry which is highly automated, such as pharmaceuticals production, will be another good example. There we go then, that's just a quick overview of the operations resource mix, which considers the difference between labour and capital-intensive processes.
Yes, so labor intensive is going to be a different kind of structure of pricing, and usually it's cheaper, right, in some ways, to do production with labor intensive. Hold on one second. We're moving towards automation and machines, and so that's more capital-intensive processes. Quality control, craftsmanship is more connected to labor-intensive activities, whereas the quality control of automation is generally steadier, I think, than most labor-intensive. But once you have what kind of production, how you're going to produce, we have mass market products too. So most mass products are going to be capital intensive, and the ones that are made in groups or customized are not going to be as capital intensive. They'll probably be more labor intensive. So there's like 3 different kinds of production methods that we traditionally use. So I wish that this was a little bit more clear. We had some problem with the projector today. Production methods. During the production process, the business takes raw materials and components and then converts them into the required products. So that's the inputs and outputs again. At each stage, value is added to the product, creating added value. These processes, as you just saw, if you want to have a definition, is when the majority of production comes from labor. It's called labor intensive. Usually skilled professions, more personalized, more customized production. Capital intensive. These businesses require a huge amount of investment. So a factory that makes cars or airplanes. And this is, including mass producing firms. Their main costs come from machineries and raw materials. So certain things, refineries, very capital intensive. So when you once you've figured out sort of the balance you're going to have between capital and labor, you look at your job production style, right? There's different ways to produce. So the whole process is seen as one operation. And there are people who do what is called systems management, who look at production systems and try to make them more efficient. The whole process is seen as one operation, as the operative must complete the one task before they can move to the next job. The same person or team of people will work on it until this entire time. So this is called job production. The whole process is one operation. The same person or team of people will work on it during this entire time. The business is able to tailor the needs of the customer to the final product. So if you're making a birthday cake for somebody, if you're a tailor making a dress, if you're a dentist, you do one job at a time because you have to customize for each particular customer. So the final product will be unique, and this is when the product is made one item at a time, as requested by customers, and therefore are only sold individually. Again, most services end up like this, haircuts and whatever. So, job production is labor intensive and typically customized for the individual, whatever the individual wants out of that choice. Often a few similar units will be made at the same time, maybe. So what are the advantages of job production? Well, if you make a suit or a dress and it's tailored, that means that it really meets the customer's requirements and it's of high quality. Also, it's more expensive though, because it's more labor intensive. It's one item, so the quality control is maintained the entire time. The customer can alter, or there's some flexibility within the process, and the unique results end up giving it added value for the customer who does not mind paying a premium price. However, it requires a lot of skill, right? It requires a lot of understanding and skilled employees. You can't do this without, you don't want to go to an amateur dentist or an amateur hairstylist. You don't want to go to an amateur tailor. So you don't want, if someone's building something customized for you, you don't want them to be amateurs. You have to have some skills. Disadvantage, far more expensive and labor intensive. Production is slow, so the company cannot make a lot of money. At least not very quickly, and very difficult to get any kind of economies of scale. Because it's slower, companies will need to have more cash flow available. So that's called a longer working capital cycle. So it takes longer to produce things, so it's longer to get income. So in that case, we have to be careful with our cash flow. So there you go, no economies of scale. So that's the next. The next thing is called batch production. Batch, you can imagine, I think a good example is a bakery, right? A bakery makes, a certain amount of each donut, a certain amount of each kind of pizza or whatever. And they are fairly similar products, but they change quite a bit. You're not making a million of the same thing. You can't sell that many of those. Batch production. In this type of production, a group of similar products are made at the same time. A new batch can be made once the first one is complete. The business may create multiple components and then assemble them to create the final product. So you do have some systems involved in this kind of batch production. If you've ever been to those bakeries like in the E-Mart in Govat, they have people working in the back, or Tous les Jours. They really like to show off their baking operation. We can imagine that, like with flowers and fruit and all those things. The batches. There's one group being sold at a time. The business may create multiple components and then assemble them to create the final product. This is called, it's just batch. Just call it batch production. It's weird. I don't know why they have a second name, batch. But there are several steps that need to be done. And in this case, some of it is a work in progress, so they have to go to the next stage of the process. Much like the sandwich ladies in the Kaizen video. Yeah, I think that's a good one. Let's look at that one again. So here's batch production. We have multiple people doing different groups of processes at the same time. So they're making batches of sandwiches.
After rearranging workbenches and assigning multiple processes to each worker, the time required fell sharply and productivity went up.
So it's not really customized. There's some differentiation between products, but for the most part, they're making groups of similar products. All right, what's the advantage of that? Well, we can use the same system and machines over and over. So that does save time and money. We can respond to customer orders faster by pushing the system a little bit faster. Some economies of scale in that. Costs are quite, relatively, you can measure your costs compared to individual pieces. I suppose it's easier to calculate them. I don't know if you save more. Allows for some specialization because you don't have to have one person who's an expert to do the whole thing. And there's still enough variety of products to interest consumers and variety of work to interest employees. Disadvantage, if you don't finish the batch when it started, you waste, you have extra waste. There's more storage costs because you have a bigger run of things to produce, so you have to make sure that things come on time and that you have storage for them. Third disadvantage is it could be a little, less exciting than having a skill. Then you have this line and flow and mass production, which are kind of similar. Flow production. This is when the production process involves passing parts along the stages in a regular flow. So in the batch system, we're going to, go to the oven, and we're going to move this group of donuts over here and put the next one in the oven and keep shifting things around. It's not a true assembly line, right? A flow production is the assembly line, and it never ends. It's like Charlie Chaplin, right? It just runs and runs and runs until we make 10,000 Nike shoes or whatever we're trying to make. So, flow production is for mass market products, huge amounts of mass market products. So this is when the production process involves passing parts along the stages of production in a regular flow. At each stage is added in a continuous process. There is no delay between any of the stages. The products are usually standardized, meaning they're all the same. It's like Oreos. However, the system is only effective if demand is also continuous. Otherwise, you're going to have way too much finished product in a warehouse somewhere near the factory that you're not selling. So, of course, you have to match demand to this kind of production process. So there also has to be really good planning because there's a lot of logistics. Let's say you're making something complicated like computers. There's probably 100 or 200 components, maybe 1,000 that you have to bring together. And they all have to arrive at the warehouse at the same time that they're needed. So this is really complex. It's called logistics. I think I mentioned it in class before. If you could get good at that kind of skill, logistics, very necessary in a global supply chain. Let's define logistics. Yeah, okay, in their very, very general definition is a detailed organization and implementation of a complex operation. But here I like this part. This part is probably more true. The overall process of managing how resources are acquired, so that means purchasing, negotiating, ordering, shipping, paying, stored, okay, so warehousing and all that, and finally all the transport within the production process from the warehouse to the factory. So many people involved and so much skill involved in getting all those those deals together. Logistics. Line production, it's a type of flow production. The products are assembled along assembly lines. So, yeah, okay. Mass production is, flow production again I think it's very similar. Of course, these have tremendous benefits in terms of economies of scale. We usually reach economies of scale in these cases. Advantages of this massive production system, okay, less waste, because typically these systems are set up to have inventory that arrives just as it's necessary, and it's managed to just to be there perfectly enough, to arrive, just enough to make what we need. So it should have less waste because, and economies of scale, of course, are massive because I would say the fixed costs are getting really low, almost zero. Also lowers labor costs, and as there's more automation meaning more capital intensive work, use of resources. Quality can be easily detected. There can be implemented quality control within the system. There won't be much work in progress. There's not going to be half-cooked pizzas or waiting for the sauce or waiting for the cheese hanging around. Everything will be finished product at the end. So there's not much, you don't need much space for storage inside the factory. Faster conversion, so you should have more cash flow, and of course average cost is lower, so that's because of economies of scale. Of course, if you're actually a worker in a system like this, you're probably just pulling you're just starting the machine or doing really some basic work in the line of production. So it could generally become boring. You don't need to have special skills. You just have to be able to run the system. If there's any breakdown or delay, it's a massive problem because time is money and all the schedules are really tight. And if anything goes wrong with either a supplier or a machine, it could be very expensive. Not a lot of flexibility with mass market products, but people expect that. They don't expect them to be perfect anyway. They expect them to be adequate to the task. Operations must halt problems to be rectified. In order to, I think these go together. In order to solve the problem, if there is a problem, it usually stops the whole process. There's not like something that can be worked on over here at the same time that we're repairing the other side. Lots of storage. Well, it depends on whether you rented that. Lots of storage. High setup costs. Very expensive to organize a big system like that. So those are the three types. We'll call them job, batch, and flow production. Job production, usually individual skilled. Batch production, still skilled like a baker, but more still and slightly more, less customized, but still pretty pretty differentiated in terms of the kind of product. You can organize to make different kinds of donuts with that system pretty easily. And then you have the mass products that just, go and produce an endless supply of Coca-Cola in the same cans over and over and over. All right, so those are the 3 types. What are they saying here? The 5 M's? I've never heard of that. I will put this into, this is key terms. I'll put this into our classroom. Yeah, this will be good homework. Read purpose for next time. So when so what happens is then as you're producing, you're gonna have a question about, how much you can, in order to calculate whether your things are working well or not, or you're using the resources that you have well, there's something called, capacity utilization, which means, how much of my total capacity, if I say what's the capacity of a concert hall or a stadium, that means how many fans can come there. What's the capacity of SIC? Woo! I think 350 students would be real pushing it, maybe that's the capacity. What's the capacity for you to do, for you to eat hot dogs in an hour? What's the capacity for anything? It's like how much can you do? Maximum amount. So in this case, the question is, how much of your capacity are you actually using?
Let's take a look at how you calculate capacity utilization. To start with, a brief reminder, what do we mean by capacity? Well, capacity is a measure of output. It's a measure of how much output a business could potentially achieve over a given period. And there are lots of different ways you can measure capacity. The key thing is it's a measure of potential output, the maximum output. So for example, a fast food outlet might be able to serve 1,000 customers per hour based on how many stations it has, how many staff it has working. A call centre might be able to handle a certain number of calls per day, assuming all the staff are in and they're all available to take calls. And similarly, a great example, of course, is a football stadium where the capacity is to a large extent fixed by the number of seats that can be sold for each match. So capacity is a measure of output. Capacity utilisation is a percentage. So it's a percentage calculation, and what it does, it compares the actual output that is produced or used compared with the potential. So capacity utilisation, you clearly need to know both the actual output but also the capacity, the potential output. We calculate capacity utilisation as a percentage, and the way we calculate it is to first divide the actual level of output in units divided by that potential output, the capacity, also in units. That gives us a number, we multiply that by 100 to give us a percentage, a proportion of potential capacity that is actually used. So let's have a quick look at 2 or 3 examples of this calculation in action so you can see the different ways in which capacity utilisation can be asked. We've got a small case study here. It's a manufacturer of dog food. Wolf Dog Foods has one production line and it can make a maximum of 100,000 cans of dog food per week. So there's our measure of capacity. It's the potential output over a specified period. In this case, 100,000 cans per week. That's a lot of dog food. Last week we're told total production or actual production was 87,000 cans. So the first question is, what was the capacity utilisation? I'll pause the video if you wish and have a go at calculating it, then we'll have a look at the answer. Well, of course, we've got most of the information that we need here, haven't we? In fact, all of it. We're told the actual output of 87,000 cans. We're told the potential, i.e. the capacity of 100,000. So we simply divide 87,000 by 100,000 and multiply it by 100. And if you do that, it comes out as 87%. In other words, Wolf Dog Food is operating below its potential capacity, and it has spare capacity, the difference between actual utilisation and 100% of 13%, doesn't it? It could operate, if it was making 100,000 cans each week, it would be operating at 100% capacity utilisation. But it's working at 13% lower than that, 87% capacity utilisation. Let's just change the example slightly. We're still with Wolf Dog Foods, but now we're told good news in the dog food industry. Wolf Dog Foods has increased its capacity to 150,000 cans per week. And it's done this by adding an extra production shift. If the capacity utilisation last week was 90%, how many cans did it make based on this new capacity? Have a go at doing the calculation and then pause the video and see if you get the question right. Well, let's have a look at the answer. We're given some of the information, we're given the potential output, the capacity of 150,000, and we're told that the utilisation figure was 90%, so we have to work out what the actual output was. Well, in this case, what we do is we take the potential, 150,000 cans. We're told the actual output was 90% of that, so 150,000 times by 0.9 or times by 90%. That comes out at 135,000 cans of dog food. So that's how many cans Wolf Dog Foods made last week as a 90% utilisation rate, based on a capacity of 150,000 cans. One final example, just to show you the different ways in which capacity utilisation can be asked. A bit more information. Wolf has expanded rapidly with a new range of organic dog food. It now plans to produce 500,000 cans, 500,000 cans per week, and it's planning a capacity utilisation of 95%. So it wants the actual output to be 500,000 cans per week at a utilisation of 95%. What capacity would it need to achieve this? Have a go at working out the answer. And if you had a go, let's have a look at the answer. Well, we're told the actual output is going to be 500,000 cans per week, that's the plan. We're told that the utilisation needs to be 95%. In other words, we're going to need to have more capacity than 500,000. How do we calculate the potential or the needed capacity? Well, it's 500,000 divided by 0.95 or divided by 95%, which comes out at 526,316 cans. So hopefully you can see how that was just a slight variation in the data given, but you were still calculating capacity utilisation. That's therefore been a short and hopefully useful introduction to how you calculate capacity utilisation.
So you don't want to have too much extra production, unused resources. So that's going to end up being something that if you're the manager who's overseeing the operation, that's going to be one of your main KPIs. How is it that you're going to get this in line so we're not wasting any resources in our production? Because there could be profit. We got some pretty good websites for this one, actually. There's a lot of materials for this. I'm going to talk about innovation in the next task. What is it? This one is something where they want to charge us all this money. It's okay. I don't think it's worth this much money. Students, $49 maybe. But the only way that you can use it is if I have another $200 one. So I find it a bit annoying. But we have the production plan, and information here to use for our class. Because they give it for free because they want us to try it. So our sample unit is pretty good. So here's the definition of capacity utilization and some of the terms. That are used. Can I move this thing? So as we know, it's the percentage of the total possible production you can do. There are some drawbacks to operating at full capacity for a long period of time. For one, staff is getting stressed out. A lot of pressure, running at 100% all the time. Operations managers cannot afford to make any production scheduling mistakes too, as there's no extra time. So if you miss one deadline, everything's out of whack. Regular customers who want to increase their orders will not be able to get what they want. So let's say they work with you and they say, oh, it's 10, I want to double it. It's like, no, sorry, we can't, we're maxed out. We can't produce any more for you. We'd love to, but we can't. So maybe there's a good reason to have a little extra capacity for those customers. Machinery will be running hard. If there's any maintenance time and need for repairs, there's a good chance that you will not be able to fit it into the schedule, which is bad, or at least what you're trying to do. So there's a little excess capacity. That's probably good. It could be called spare capacity. And this might be a question that if you're producing and whoever's ordering the production from you, or if it's the same company, they might be asking, well, how much excess capacity do we have, just in case we want to have a marketing campaign and we want to push a product and we need to produce a little bit more of it so we can match the demand increase of the advertising campaign. We need to know. Full capacity, that's when you are at your maximum, and then you have short capacity or capacity shortage, which means that you don't know, you need to produce more than you can do with the factory that you have. So, what can you do in a situation like that? You can imagine already that there's two things you can do. You can reinvest money from the company and try to build another factory, which is going to be pretty stressful and going to be expensive and risky in case it doesn't work out. Or, as Nike does, they have a bunch of subcontractors or outsourced companies, and these are all used, and there's less risk because you can go in and out of the contract that you're working on with them pretty much when you need to. You don't need to invest the money into the development. They're there. Of course, if there is any problem with the quality control, there could be disputes or arguments, and then you'll have a hard time filling your orders for your customers. So, gotta be careful about that. Usually, that gets solved because there's a contract between the exact, like Nike, the exact specifications will be clear, and it'll be stated that if the product does not have the exact thing that Nike's looking for, any mistakes, right? There's so many lost shoes to mistakes. If there's any errors at all, they won't accept it. So two main solutions there. So let me go to the production manager video today. We'll talk about that for a minute, and think it's a pretty good video. Now this guy is, I hope we never lose this video because it's such a good video. Such a silly name for it. And it's a good chance we could lose it because, you know, I have to remember it. So this is an agricultural product company. This is a batch production. Can't see it super well. I wish we could see it better. I wish I could block the sun out completely. It's not as bad as all this, but again, I'll have to put it in the, if you want to rewatch it in detail, I'll have to put it into the classroom for that. We just had a light die on the projector today. So, this guy is the production manager for a farm, and it just runs through his whole day, through the morning until the evening, and all the different stuff that he has to do. So, to me, you can think about your homework now, because I want you to go through and think about all the things that he's doing. Like write down all the different things that he has to do in a day. It should be, man, there should be at least 20, I think. A lot of things as a production manager.
I work for Cheese Marketing. I'm the site production manager. So that basically means anything that's produced on this site, I'm in charge of it. Today I came into work, usual time, which is around 5 or 10 to 7. Swipe on as I arrive, and then I'll go for a wander around the site. That involves going around the dispatch area, walking around all the different production areas, because I feel it's very important to walk around in the morning, see what's happened, anything's happened overnight, see if there's any produce laying around that shouldn't be where it should be. And then go around and generally say hello to everybody, good morning, how are you? Make sure all the factories are started and running. And then that'll take me to around about 8 o'clock, 8:15. After I've seen orders start coming in around 7:30 to 8:30, so we get a feel of what the day is going to progress. And then at 8:30, I'll make my way up to the main office where we have a kind of like a group production meeting where I'll go and represent the 3 factories. And I'll just say a very short bit on the general position of the factory, the quality of the stock, and what the day is going to look like going forward. Then at 9:30 after that meeting, we have our specific factories morning meeting. That will run for around about half an hour. It's supposed to be quick, punchy. I've got whiteboards on the walls where I display all of my daily results for each of the factory areas. So we're looking at 0 rejections, 100% customer service, no accidents, and that's important, is make money. Today we've had some issues on celery. So one of the issues, because of the yield, has been very low, so it was very important that I got out to the field today to see the quality of the celery. So I'm doing just coming out to the field, because this is some celery which we're going to be harvesting in the next 3 or 4 days. So I just want to get a feel for what the celery is going to look like before it comes into the factory. Because particularly if the quality is not particularly good, we need to get extra labour in to deal with any quality issues. Or the other way around, we can maybe cut labour out and plan in shorter days if the celery quality is good. So all I'm doing is just going to cut it out from the bottom of the...
So just in that one thing, he's got to do 4. So what is he doing? He's in the field. He's he said harvest is coming. So he's got 3 or 4 days before the celery that they're trying to it's a vegetable that they're producing they have to check the quality, and if they bring it to the factory and it needs a lot of work. In other words, they have to cut a lot of pieces off of it, then they need more labor. And that's what he just said. So he has to think, okay, these are good quality. I actually don't need as many workers to make them look good when we sell them, or they're not very good. So I have to have more workers in order to get them out as fast as I'm supposed to go. Because this is supposed to fit into an order for a customer for this. So he's checking, he's doing quality control, he's making plans for staffing and considerations about the future, and also, yeah, he's got like 3 or 4 things going on right there.
On the ground. And what I'm looking for is any internal issues. There is a few on the outer side end of the celery at the moment. You can see it's starting to turn because we're getting towards the end of the season. So I just cut in a bit further, and there's some more quality issues there, but all in all, it's quite a good sample. During the day, I'll generally get lots and lots of different issues that I need to sort out. If I could sit still for an hour and not do anything, I would do that. But generally, there's always something. So I'm going to take you up now onto the rig, which is actually a mini food factory. The hygiene upon the rig is extremely important. So we need to wash our hands before going up with some alcohol gel. We're standing on the back of the rig now. The cutters are down at the bottom there, cutting the celery. It comes up to the top here on a series of conveyors after being trimmed to level. The rig is driving down the celery field on 2 tracks at the pace at which the cutters can keep up. Now what you can see, we've got the PTOs coming up the top here, which are then crated off onto a pallet and sent back to the factory for our secondary process. The rest of the celery, which at the moment they're doing at heart, is then chilled in a wash tank. It's packed on a flow wrapper into the box and potentially straight to the supermarket. So nothing else needs to be done to this now. It's been packed, it's been labelled, it's put in its box, it can go straight to the supermarket. As it leaves the field, it will go on a refrigerated trailer running at less than 5 degrees to our dispatch on the lorry to the customer, potentially within 24 hours.
Kieran and production managers alike have got to remain calm. They've got to be analytical, they've got to be good at, technically good at what they do in terms of their knowledge of their product, but most of all, I think, they've really just got to be able to manage and get the best out of the team. And Kieran's pretty good.
The celery that we've seen trimmed this morning out of the rig has now come in here, QC checked, and is then put into cold storage. 3.5 degrees in here to keep it nice and fresh, and then it's now going onto the trimming lines and will then be washed, packed and sent out to the supermarkets. Just seeing that the celery is being washed well enough at the moment. Because obviously with heavy rain you get heavy soiling on the celery, so we need to make sure that the tanks are doing a good enough job for us.
The production manager, it's a difficult job. In fresh produce, it provides a lot of challenges. I guess there's 2 aspects of life as a production manager which you interview for. Technically, of course, we want people to be intelligent and analytical and knowledge of product and process. Things you get taught, we look for that. Academic skills, we look for it. But just as importantly, it's probably true for most industry, but very true in this one, that we also look for attitude and approach. They're vital.
And we're going into the high care part of the factory now, which is the final part of the process where the product can be handled. So it's imperative that it's kept very, very clean at all times. Hence, we change our footwear. This barrier which I've just stepped over is a barrier between outside the factory and inside the factory. So now, I'll wash my hands once here, and then I'll put on the white jacket as we go through, wash my hands again, then sanitise, and then we go into the high care area, which everyone's wearing the same outfit, white boots, white jackets, red hairnets. So here we are, we're packing the celery on the flow wrapper here.
It's exactly the same operation as what we saw on the rig. It's a flow wrap bag, a top and bottom seal with a back seal on the pack. Each pack then passes through a metal detector and then a check weigher. It's because it's a ready-to-eat product, we have to do a metal detection check on every single pack that goes through the factory, because we cannot take a risk of packing any metal into a ready-to-eat product that a customer could potentially eat without washing. It then also is weighed to make sure that we're packing the right weight that says on the bag. This metal detector is then checked every half an hour by a QC operative to make sure that the machine is working correctly.
I want to make my way over to the radish pack house, and we've got a large promotion starting this weekend, so I need to get in there, see the supervisor and make a plan for the weekend over the orders, and also have a good look at what the quality is, because we're experiencing quite a lot of rain at the moment, so the quality coming in again to the radish pack house could be variable. And with the large promotion weekend coming up, need a good plan going forward.
It's what I'm doing, I'm just getting a brief overview of what the quality of the radish is looking like coming through. Really, we're just looking for anything with these long stalks. You can see the girl here, she's pulling them off. And then looking for anything, any external defects, etc. that could be on the radish. All in all, this is a really very good sample that's coming off the field at the moment. This has been harvested, what are we on? It's been harvested yesterday, coming in last night, packing it today. So it's very, very fresh crop. Kind of going out to all the major supermarkets. After the product's been graded through there, it comes up and goes through a vertical form filling machine. It's basically a multi-head weigher at the top, and then the radish is dropped down at 200 grams into the bag is filled, and then again it goes through a check weigher, as we saw in the celery pack house, and is then packed into boxes. It's making sure that the finished product is packed, that the print is very good and clear, and then the radishes look good. It really does look, it's excellent.
The scale of the operation here is absolutely huge. If you buy some radish in your local supermarket, it's very, very likely that it would have come from our factory. It shows that we're producing on average 400,000 packs of radishes a week, and supplying virtually the whole of the UK market. Our relationships with the supermarket are ups and downs. They have quite strict rules they place upon us, but it's a fresh produce industry. You are working to a very short shelf life product. It's not like producing baked beans with 6 months life, putting them in a store, taking them out and sending them out whenever you need to. We have to react very, very quickly. An order may come in at 9 o'clock at night and be going out at 8 o'clock the next morning. So you are found with yourself being pushed to the limit to get the freshness and deliver to the required specifications for the supermarkets.
Okay, we're now standing outside of the dispatch area. After a very long day, these are the last 2 lorries now being loaded. There could be 100 vehicles leaving this site. However, most days there's around 40. If there's 100 lorries leaving, they have to be extremely slick. So the lorries have to come in, loaded, out, very, very smooth. So I'm now off to swipe out and go home. So I hope you've enjoyed watching this video. And if you get into this industry, I'm sure you'll find it very, very rewarding, as I have done.
My top tip for anyone wishing to get into the industry is to get yourself a Saturday job. Work really hard, don't give in, it's chucking it down with rain outside. Don't worry about it, just crack on, keep on going, and make yourself shine. You'll see other jobs going on around you. If you see those jobs, have a go at them, see if you like them. Then, once you've left school, you'll have a good idea of what the industry is all about. Then you can make that decision when you want to get onto the management ladder and work your way up for a business.
A real down home UK style business there. So I'm sure you can find about 20 different things that he does there. I want to take that information later, and then you could watch it again later if you need to, but break it down into which different things he's doing: inventory, quality control, planning. So we'll get to that later. Your first homework is to break down that gentleman's day at the farm. All right, talk to you later.